Welcome back to our study on the book of Daniel. I hope it's been a profitable study for you thus far. If you have your Bible, go ahead and take it out and turn to Daniel chapter 3 for me. That's where we're going to spend our time today. So, we've gone through a couple of big events in the way of Daniel, as well as the three Hebrew boys to this point. Their whole life has changed. They've been uprooted from what they knew. They've been taken back to Babylon. They've been taught the way of the Chaldeans. They were given a diet they didn't want. You go through this whole long list of all these changes that took place for them. And then what we talked about last week was Daniel chapter 2, in which case you've got Nebuchadnezzar here, who's this king, this great, powerful king. And he's bothered by a dream. And we spent a lot of time on that. So I won't go back through it all, but I would encourage you, if you didn't study with us, to go back and look at the study on Daniel chapter 2. But this dream really impacts this king, and he wants to know the meaning. No one can tell the meaning. It's only Daniel, after prayer with God, that can tell him the meaning of this dream. But he misses the point of it. See, he hears that of this image that he has this dream of, this giant image that he, Babylon, represents this head of gold, this very impressive head on top of the statue. But he ends chapter 2. Notice how he ends chapter 2 in verse 47. The king answered to Daniel, "Oh, of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, seeing that thou couldst reveal us this secret." So here is this king who at least now recognizes God, but notice he never bows his knee to God. He doesn't bow his head. He doesn't show reverence to God. He makes a statement, well, surely your God is God of gods. No, surely our God is God, and bow your head and stop there. No need to go any further. But that's not what he does. He just makes that statement. So if you're Nebuchadnezzar, what are you going to do next? Are you going to recognize God as the God and then live accordingly? I want to know what God expects from you, or are you going to go about it a different way? Nebuchadnezzar's going to go about it a different way. He's going to go about it a way that many people would go about it. Actually, I dare say he's going to go about it the way the majority of people would go about it. You see, he just heard that his kingdom, Babylon, of all these nations stacked up, uh, representing these nations. He represents the golden head, the most valuable metal. That's what he represents. But he misses the part that a stone cut out of the mountain without hands is going to destroy them all. He overlooked that part and jumped to the part, well, look how great I am. But how many of us would have done the exact same thing? So notice what Nebuchadnezzar does in verse 1 of chapter 3. In fact, we're going to read just a few verses and kind of set the scene from where we are now in chapter 3. So verse 1 says, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold. Well, now remember Babylon, gold head of the previous image he saw, whose height was 60 cubits, that's 90 feet, and its width was 6 cubits, that's 9 feet, 90 by 9. And he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which the king had set up. So the king hears that his empire is this golden, magnificent head of this image, and then says, well, I'm going to build an entire statue of solid gold, 90 feet tall by 9 feet wide. 1 cubit's roughly 18 inches, so 60 cubits, 90 feet, and 6 cubits, 9 feet. So because I'm gold, I'm going to build this entire golden image. They're going to call all of these people here to see the dedication of this image. Now, in itself, I mean, if you stop right there, okay, that's bad enough. You're not supposed to be creating these images. What is he about to do? If you're this great king and you're going to make this great golden image that represents you and represents your empire, what do you think is going to fall next? So after all these people are gathered together at the statue, notice what happens next in verses 4 to 5. The herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, the psaltery, and symphony with all kind of music. If you hear this music playing, if you're all nations and peoples, so if anyone there hears this music playing, what are you supposed to do with this golden image that has just been set up to represent this nation here? You shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up." But not only has he set up a golden statue, now he is making and requiring that you worship said golden statue. But what if you don't? What if you can't? You say, well, what do you mean? What if I can't? I mean, there's nothing I could, but as a Christian, can you? As a God fearing person, can you? Maybe I'll phrase it that way better. Because we know Daniel's there. We know Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael are there. They're God fearing people. We've talked about them so far. And they have a law. Their law says, "You shall have no other God before me." God, we know, is a jealous God. We know how it worked out when they were basically creating these golden calves for worship. So if you're one of these few faithful people there, can you do this? Can you make that choice? Well, he's the king, he's the authority on the matter, and I'm supposed to honor and respect authority. So that means I kind of have to do this. And while we do read in the Bible, we are to be submissive and submit ourselves to leaders and leadership and follow laws, be law abiding. Is there anything in the Bible that says go against what God says if it appeases some man? No. What you do find in the Bible, time and time and time and time and time again, is keep my commands, keep my law, follow my law, do what I'm telling you to do. That's what we find so often in the Bible. So if there is a law that supersedes the word of God, that comes out and it's going to overstep what God has said, it's going to make you do something that goes against the word of God, guess what you cannot do? Well, you cannot do whatever that thing is. That's the problem with that. You can't do that. Then that goes against God, and friend, you've got a lot bigger problems if you're going against God. I mean, Nebuchadnezzar here, it would be bad to go against. I mean, he's a powerful king, but there's nothing compares to going against God. Nothing. But see, there's a warning. It's not a slap on the hand kind of thing for this. So we talk about this account quite often, Daniel chapter 3, especially in the youth group. We kind of go through this, and you're probably not unfamiliar with this account. This is not an easy. It's not an easy thing. We've talked about it a lot, and it's like, okay, well, they were faithful. Well, yeah, they were faithful. They were tremendously faithful, especially given what they were staring down. That's what you got to remember. Because look at verse 6. "And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace." So if you don't do this thing, you're not going to get sent to detention. You're not going to get sent home from work. You're not going to get your hand slapped. You're going to get thrown into a fiery furnace. You're going to be killed. It's not going to be a pleasant death whatsoever. So verse 7 says, "So at the time when all the people heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, all of these things, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped." Worship there. Notice that use the word. They didn't fall down and go, okay, here we're doing what we're supposed to do. They fell down and worshiped the golden image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. They fell down and worshiped. Almost all of them. Not all. The Chaldeans, who were essentially the ones training these Hebrew boys that were brought back in this captivity. They were trained 3 years in the way of the Chaldeans. Well, these Chaldeans have a problem. They don't like these boys. These boys are blessed of God, and because of that, they've excelled in Babylon, and they're put into leadership roles. But if you're the Chaldeans, Are you happy about that? Well, they're obviously not going to be thrilled with that point. So they're looking for some way they can get rid of these boys. So the Chaldeans come forward and they accuse the Jews in verse 8. Verse 8. So they're going to go to the king. Then in verse 10 says, "You, O king, have made a decree that whoever hears all of this music, they shall fall down and worship this golden image. Whoever doesn't is going to meet the burning fiery furnace." Then in verse 12 says, "And there are certain Jews whom you have set over affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego." Now that's their Babylonian name. This is Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, our three Hebrew boys, we often call them. "These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up." Yes, they are not worshiping that because they cannot worship that and still be faithful to God. It's not really that complicated. Eh, There's a lot to it. It's a big task to ask because of the weight that they're about to face, but it doesn't matter to them because they're faithful. To someone that's not faithful, it's going to look like a lot, but they believe in God. And they understand that if they do what Nebuchadnezzar and what all these people are saying that they have to do, well, they're violating God's command. They're going against the word of God. That's not where we want to be. So here are these Chaldeans. So let me ask you this. Think about this for a moment. This music plays. Everyone is bowing down to this worship. Just think about it, just a room full of people, but I mean, obviously like an outside corridor or something. And you've got all of these people. You hear this music, they all turn towards this statue and they're dropping to their knees and they're worshiping. And you're looking around and you realize, why are these three guys not doing this? How come they're not doing this? Why are they standing on their principles and more importantly, why are they standing on their faith in God? What are they doing? But here's the point. When you do this, what do you expect to happen? Do you expect, or do you think, I should say, let me phrase it that way. Do you think the world is going to stand up and they're just going to start clapping for you and say, way to go, guys. Way to stand up for what you believe? Is that what you think happens when you start going against the grain? If everybody is headed in a certain direction, all of a sudden you turn and you start going the opposite direction because you know that direction is not right. You think they're going to applaud you for doing it. See, if you stand for the truth, there's always going to be someone waiting and running, waiting to run to the king and say, "Oh, king, they're not doing what you said. Oh, leader, they're not listening to what you said. They're not following after what you're telling them." And most of us are doing it, but you've got a few that aren't, and I don't know why. And this is a problem. And here's the thing: who cares what everybody else is doing? From the sense that it impacts you. Now, obviously, as Christians, we care about their soul and we want them to be saved. But as far as their actions impacting your actions, who cares what they're doing? We just talked about this on Sunday with Joshua. And when he calls all these leaders to Shechem, he said, "Listen, you choose this day who you're going to serve, God or the false gods of your fathers in Egypt and the other side of the river. You choose this day who you're going to serve. But understand, as for me and my house, we're going to serve God. That's my choice. You make your choice, I make my choice." But what we're running into a lot of times now is Christians are impacted by the choices of political correctness, popular opinion. We are impacted by these things, and all of a sudden, whereas we should be turning and going opposite of what everybody else is doing, we're kind of going cross a little bit. We're trying to get it to where we can appease both sides and we can make people still be happy with us, and we're okay with that. And so long as I feel good in my conscience, like I feel like I'm trying, and people aren't getting mad at me, then I'm okay. Now I've kind of stepped on what God said a little bit, but I'm keeping the gist of the word. Here's the hard part to remember sometimes. You're either with God or you're against God. You know, well, I'm not really against God. You're either with God or you're not with God, therefore you're against God. Say, well, that seems kind of tough. Well, friend, that's not me saying that. That's the Bible saying that. You can't serve two masters. So who is it? Is it the fiery furnace of political correctness, of popular opinion? You look at churches today that are perfectly fine and open to whatever it may be, right? Marriage, divorce, remarriage, homosexuality. We can go down a whole long gambit of list here. We have to make the choice for ourselves, just as these three Hebrew boys did, staring down a fiery furnace to say, listen, I'm going to believe in God. I'm going to worship God. I'm not going to do this. I understand what you're telling me. I understand there's a fiery furnace. If I don't, I get it. You need to understand one thing. And now jump to what Joshua says. I don't care what you're doing. Me and my house are going to worship the Lord. That's what these boys are going to do. They're not going to just bow out with everybody else. They are going to worship God. So these Chaldeans are going to go and they're going to rat out the Hebrew boys, if you will, that they're going to go be some snitches and say, listen, they're not doing this. They're not worshiping this image which you have set up. So as I've said already, what do you think Nebuchadnezzar was going to say or do in this situation? Is it the hand clap and applause you think you're about to get? This isn't, you trying to stand up to your mother or you trying to stand up to a friend or somebody you're kind of close with that may give you some leniency. What these boys are doing are standing up to King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Now, remember, in this image that he sees in his dream, there's a reason why Babylon is listed as the golden head. This is a major empire. This is a unified, singular empire under one head. That's Nebuchadnezzar. This is a powerful group of people. You're not just standing up to somebody that you might be a friend with. It's like, okay, whatever. This is serious. Now, he's not going to take this very well. Verse 14, Nebuchadnezzar spoke to the three Hebrew boys because he's already been enraged now in verse 13. He calls them to him. Nebuchadnezzar spoke to them, saying, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Here's the incredible part about this verse. If you're these three boys and you are staring down a fiery furnace, and you could ask the question. Now, you're already in favor with the king, right? We know these boys are already in favor with the king. And he asks him this question. Is it true? You're staring down the fiery furnace, i.e., you're staring down death. How many would say, that's not true, okay? I don't know what these folks are talking about. I worship that image just like you said to do. O King, live forever. All that good jazz. How many of us would hopped on that bandwagon as soon as that question was answered and lied about it? But it's lying for self-preservation. That has to be okay. Well, it's still lying. It's still lying. Lying is still sin. So then he gives him another chance. So is this true? Now, if you're ready, at the time you hear this, all of this music, that if you bow down and you worship the image, then good. Then we're good. That's it. He's kind of giving the second chance, like, okay, guys, now listen, just make sure you do this and you're going to be good. But he gives another warning. If you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. But he doesn't stop there. No, he doesn't stop there. He actually goes on to a much bigger, um, how do we say that? He goes on to a much bigger challenge, I guess we'll say, because it's no longer about the people's faith. Because notice what he says following that question. You'll be cast into immediate burning fiery furnace if you don't worship it. But notice this ending. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? Old Nebi apparently has forgotten what the interpretation of his dream was. Yes, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, you are the golden head represented in this image you have seen. the most valuable of the metals listed. You're the guy. Your empire is going to be destroyed. You're going to be crushed. All these big empires and nations are going to be crushed by a stone cut out of the mountain without hands. And oh, how quickly he forgot about that. He said, truly your God is God of the gods, your Lord is Lord of the kings. That's how he ends chapter 2. And now he's here saying, Who? Who is this God who will deliver you from my hands? Because all of a sudden, if you're Nebuchadnezzar and you're hearing all this and you've built your golden statue, you are more powerful than God. And that's where he has put himself, that he believes he is more, and you put whatever behind that you want, more powerful, more valuable, more knowledgeable. He is more than God. He's Nebuchadnezzar. This is Babylon. That's the challenge to these boys. Who is going to save you? I'm going to give you a chance. If you hear this music, then make sure you bow down and worship. And standing in front of a fiery furnace, they could have easily said, "Oh no, King, we're going to do what you tell us to do. We're going to be good little soldiers. We're going to go about what you want because after all, we really just want to get along and fit in, and we want everything to be nice and pleasant. This is what we're going to do." Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king in verse 16, "O Nebuchadnezzar," and keep in mind at this point, it's not just O Nebuchadnezzar, it's O great King Nebuchadnezzar of a great empire like Babylon. We have no need to answer you in this matter. They might as well just turn their backs on him altogether. We have no need to answer you on this matter. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. If this is the case, that we are going to be met with a fiery furnace, our God, whom we serve, is more than able to deliver us from this fiery furnace. In fact, we're faithful to God. We believe God is going to deliver us from this fiery furnace. Now, lady out there, I'm not worried about you, Nebuchadnezzar. I'm worried about God. I'm not worried about you, school teacher that's trying to cram evolution down my throat. I'm not worried about you, political correct society that says, well, if you believe in God, then you're not, or you believe in God and the commands that we have of Jesus that says all these things are wrong and incorrect, then you're not a very good person. You're behind the times. I don't care what you're saying about that because I believe in God and I believe that God is going to deliver me because of my faith in Him and no other reason. Because I have an obedient faith in Christ. See, they're telling the king, if we face the furnace, then so be it. That's fine. So be it. But we know God is able to deliver us. And he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you. Now, hear the power in this verse, and really it's the power of their faith in this verse. But let it be known to you, O king, if he does not deliver us, verse 18, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship your image. We know he's able to deliver us. We believe he's going to deliver us. Even if he does not deliver us, we're not going to do it. Therefore, we're willing to face death. We're not going to do it. What incredible faith they had. What incredible faith. And whereas us as Christians want to celebrate and rejoice that faith and say that is incredible what those men were willing, those young men were willing to do, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't happy. Verse 19, the Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression of his face changed towards these three boys. And he spoke and he commanded that not only are they about to go into the furnace, but that he wants this furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. In verse 20, he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in this army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into their fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, their turbans, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commands were so urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Nebuchadnezzar is furious. He's angry at these men because they have defied the king, and you just don't apparently know who you're talking to because I'm King Nebuchadnezzar. I'm the golden head, the image. I'm the one that's made this 90 by 9 image of gold. Listen, I'm the guy. I'm the king. You're going to do what I say, and you're not going to talk back to me. They talk back to it. So he's furious. He says, I want my furnace 7 times hotter. Keep all their clothes on. Bind them. I want them to burn, and I don't want there to be a single doubt about it. I want them gone, and I want them gone now. This is an urgent request from this powerful king. 7 times hotter. No, making absolutely no doubt about it. So hot and such an urgent that these um, these people who are throwing these boys in the fire, they get burned up themselves and they're killed. They die because of this request. This is the furnace they are facing. They get cast down into the furnace. They should be dead in seconds. They should be dead in seconds. But notice what verse 24 says. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he arose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? And they answered, True, O king. But look, he said, I see 4 men loose and walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. He threw 3 in there, yet he sees 4, but he sees something else. They should be dead in seconds. In fact, the ones throwing them in there were killed trying to do so, but he sees them loosed, no longer bound, and they're walking around as if they're on just an afternoon stroll. They're just walking around and just taking things in the middle of a burning fiery furnace, 7 times hotter than what they would normally do because of the fury of the king. They're just strolling around. But he sees 4, not 3. He threw 3 in, but he sees 4. But notice what he says at the end of verse 25. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. The form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Could God not have just said, okay, listen, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you guys have been faithful to me, whoop, and I'm going to set you somewhere else. He could have just snatched them up, delivered them somewhere else, and said, you're not going to face this trial, this temptation. We're not going to do this. You've been faithful. Here you go. You see, sometimes the fire is going to be in front of us. The trials are going to be in front of us. The temptations are going to be in front of us, whether it's at school or whether it's at work or whether it's a social gathering of whatever whatever sort it may be. It's not to say we're not going to face trial and temptation. We're not just going to be lifted and removed from them because we're Christians and we're living to a higher example of Christ. Not because we're better people, but because Christ is better, and in turn, us in Him makes us better and faithful to Him, only through Him. We're not going to be just lifted and carried away from the fire, but what we are told is that He'll never forsake us. He'll never leave us nor abandon us. He's always going to be with us. So here are these 3 Hebrew boys saying, listen, we know God is able to deliver us from this furnace. We believe He's going to be able to deliver us from this furnace. And if He does not, we're still not going to do these things. Boys went into the furnace. But they were never alone in that furnace because as soon as they went into the furnace, Christ was with them. The Lord was with them. And the fourth looks like the Son of God. No, the furnace wasn't removed from them, but they were protected because of their faith in God. Then Nebuchadnezzar in verse 26 went to the mouth of the fiery furnace and he calls them and he says, Servants of the Most High God. What a change in attitude. This is the same one that's furious, that wants them thrown into this fire now. Do it quickly. I want them gone, heated, hot. I want these men dead. Servants of the Most High God, come out here. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out of the midst of the fires. Then all of these people, the satraps, the governors, the king's counselors, they gathered together and they saw these men. They were in this fire, says, whose bodies the fire had no power. Their head was not singed, nor were their garments even affected. Then it also says, and the smell of fire was not on them. I can't even grill a hamburger and not get smoke smell on me. That's the blessings that God had with them in that fire. The Lord was with them in that fire and encompassed them that they were so safe in the middle of a burning fiery furnace that they should have been dead in mere seconds. They didn't, their hair wasn't singed, their eyebrows wasn't singed. And if you've ever tried to light a fire and all of a sudden it poof takes off, you know what I'm talking about with that eyebrow singeing. Clothes were not burned or frayed, and they didn't even smell like smoke. That was God's protection of them. They didn't lie when Nebuchadnezzar gave them a second chance. They didn't just go along with the crowd. They remained faithful. And guess what happened when they did? Nebuchadnezzar walked through the fire. Nebuchadnezzar threw them in the fire. The Lord walked with them in the fire. That's what faith in God does. God's not saying we're not going to face some sort of fiery trial like this. That's not what he's told. That's not what we're told. But we're told that he will not leave us nor forsake us. Then Nebuchadnezzar spoke in verse 28, saying, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and they have frustrated the king's words and yielded their body. Yet they should not serve nor worship any God except their own God. Therefore, I make the decree that any people, nation, and language which speaks anything amidst the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut into pieces, and their houses shall be made an ash heap, because there is no other God who can deliver like this. And the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the provinces of Babylon. That's so. Not only has Nebuchadnezzar before said, Surely your God is the God of gods. He still built his own golden image. He quickly forgot. He didn't worship God. He just said, Yeah, your God's pretty great. Never worshiped him. And in fact, what we see in chapter 3 is his power in his own mind, his greatness in his own mind. Because that's one of the issues we face as people. If you tell me I'm great, pretty soon I'm going to start believing it. If you tell me I'm powerful, pretty soon I'm going to start thinking I'm more powerful than anyone else. And I'll stop seeing anything I am, anything I have, is the blessings from God. And then suddenly, all of these things which I used to give the honor and glory to God now are because I am so great. Nebuchadnezzar saw what God could do. He realized the power of God, and that Daniel was the only one who could interpret the dream. He saw it again, and that God was the only one that could deliver these boys from this fiery furnace, that they enraged the king, that they frustrated the king. And the king says, Blessed is the God of these boys. But where is the worship? See, it's easy to say, Blessed be God. Blessed is God. Blessed is your God. You know, how great is God? Where is the worship there? Nebuchadnezzar is never worshiping God here. He's not saying, okay, listen, I understand that what I've done was wrong. I understand that clearly your God is the guy. He's the creator. That's who I'm going to worship. We're not going to do any of this other stuff. Can you teach me about God? He doesn't do that. And we're going to see more of that as we continue on in the study. Final thoughts on Daniel chapter 3. If you have any questions or comments on these, make sure you're putting them in here. I'd be more than happy to go through and answer them. Or if you'd like to have a discussion on this, I'd be more than willing to study with you. But final thoughts on Daniel chapter 3, and I want you to think about this. How easy would it have been to go along with the king and just and make an excuse? Listen, he's the authority person. From God, I'm supposed to adhere to what the authorities say, and that would have been, well, that part would have been correct. up to and except the part where you were commanded to worship something other than God. When we're told to do something that goes outside of the will of God, you have to decide what you're going to do. I'm not just talking about from a leader stance. I'm talking about anything in life. If you're told that you have to decide if you're going to do this, you're going to do whatever this is, and I understand this goes against what your God has said, but this is what we're going to do because this is what everyone else is doing, so it must be right and fine if that's what everybody else is doing. So to piggyback off of the sermon that we just had on Sunday, and I've already made mention of it again, you have to decide for yourself. Is the furnace enough to scare you from your faith? Or will you be like them and say, listen, I know God is able to deliver me from your hands. I believe he will deliver me from your hands. But if he doesn't, I'm still going to be faithful to him. If I walk through this furnace, so be it. If I face this trial, so be it. If you don't like me because of my faith, so be it. I am going to serve the Lord. That's the example they set for us in this incredible chapter. And we look at this and we kind of blow by 'cause we're used to hearing it. But it's an incredible example of faith. It's an incredible example of faith. Well, if you have any questions, please make sure you reach out to me. If not, I hope this study has been beneficial to you. And I thank you for your time and attention today as we've gone through the study. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day and God bless.